All right, question 1. The passage piles up evidence that extreme rainfall is becoming more frequent, both in the UK and globally, and that warmer air holds more moisture, hence more potential for heavy rain. It notes that countries like India and China expect and prepare for this, and contrasts that with the UK's current mindset. What's the author driving toward? Not a prediction about temperatures, nor a general lament about the past. The prescriptive thrust is, we in the UK must change our thinking and plan our infrastructure to cope with frequent flooding. That's the actionable takeaway the evidence is marshaled to support. So A is merely a critique, underprepared, rather than the recommended action. B is an illustrative comparison, not the main point. C and E wander off into climate speculation, not argued here. D captures the core conclusion. The UK must plan its infrastructure for high flood risk, so the best answer is D. That's the author's main conclusion, because all the statistics and comparisons are there to justify that call to action. All right, question 2. An unusual dartboard with 6 sectors labeled 8, 24, 11, 21, 18, and 30. The task? You must score exactly 50 with 3 darts, all in different sectors. Which single number must be one of those 3? In other words, among all possible distinct triples that sum to 50, which number appears in every valid triple? Looking at the circle, my immediate thought is to test extreme values first. The big 30 jumps out. If you use 30, you need the other 2 to sum to 20, but there are no 2 distinct sectors that add to 20. 8 plus 12, 11 plus 9, 18 plus 2, 21 minus 1. None available. So 30 is impossible. That's a quick elimination and saves a lot of time. Next, try to find actual triples that do work. Try 24. You then need 26 from 2 distinct other sectors. 8 plus 18 is exactly 26. So 24 plus 8 plus 18 equals 50. That's one valid triple. Good. But we must be careful. The question asks which number must be hit. So we need to check every other possible triple that makes 50 and see the common element. Try other combinations systematically, or mentally enumerate sensible pairs. 11 plus 21 plus 18 equals 50 as well, because 11 plus 21 equals 32, and add 18 gives 50. Checking the rest of the combinations quickly shows there are no other triples summing to 50. So the only valid triples are 24, 8, 18, and 21, 11, 18. The one number common to both is 18. Initially, I noticed 24 in a tidy 8 plus 18 plus 24, and that looked tempting. But testing other combinations reveals a second solution without 24, and 18 is the only unavoidable hit. Final answer, C, 18. Brief reason, only 2 distinct triples of sectors sum to 50, and 18 appears in both. All right, question 3. We're told researchers have found structural brain differences between larks and owls, with night owls showing lower quality white matter in areas linked to depression. Owls are also at greater risk of depression. Then the kicker, night owls should try to adjust their sleep patterns to avoid mental health problems. My first instinct is to watch for a leap from correlation to prescription. We've got associations. Being an owl correlates with both a white matter feature and a higher depression risk. But the conclusion tells owls to change their sleep to avoid mental health problems, which quietly assumes that changing sleep will change the relevant brain features or the risk. Let's test the options. A. It fails to refer to people in between. That's not the logical hinge. The argument is about owls specifically. B. It ignores how common depression is. Prevalence doesn't address the inference. D. It implies owls would wish to change their sleep patterns, irrelevant to whether the advice follows logically. E. It associates depression with other mental health problems. The conclusion says mental health problems, but depression is one such problem. That's a small generalization, not the core flaw. C. It assumes that changing one's sleep pattern will cause a change in the quality of white matter. Yes, exactly the causal leap. The data show correlation. The advice assumes causation from modifying sleep to improving white matter and thus lowering risk. That's the flaw. So the best answer is C. The argument assumes a causal effect of sleep change on the brain structure and hence on mental health, which hasn't been established. Final answer, C, because it mistakes correlation for causation in recommending a remedy. All right, question 4. We've got an argument weighing up the convenience of scrapping tiny coins against the consequences. The passage concedes that rounding to the nearest 5 pence might be simpler, but then insists this would inevitably push prices up. 99 pence nudged to £1. That harms consumers. It then adds that small coins do add up for savers, and that charities benefit from these coins as donations. So the thrust is, withdrawing small denominations leads to price rises that don't benefit consumers, and it removes a stream of value to savers and charities. That directly supports the idea that both consumers and charities would lose out. Check the options. Suggesting we should donate small coins, A, is too prescriptive. The passage doesn't instruct, it merely notes a benefit. Saying coins are unimportant, B, contradicts the emphasis on savings and donations. Claiming people shouldn't worry about price rises, C, is the opposite of the passage's warning. Encouraging saving, D, may be sensible, but it's not the main conclusion drawn. The only option that captures the argument's conclusion is E. Consumers and charities would lose out if small coins were withdrawn. So the best answer is E, because it follows directly from the stated harms to consumers and the loss to charities. All right, question 5. I can't walk you through my full inner monologue, but here's the short version. The author says you should confess you don't recognize someone because your micro-expressions will probably give you away if you pretend. For that to hold, it's not enough that micro-expressions exist. The other person must be able to detect them and infer you're lying. That's the hidden hinge. Options about embarrassment or preferences are beside the point, and whether they've mistaken you is irrelevant to the logic. So the necessary assumption is that people can recognize those micro-expressions. Therefore, B.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate. He knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 6. We've got a London-Auckland trip. Auckland is 12 hours ahead of GMT. I leave London at 17:30 GMT on 19 August and arrive at 06:15 on 21 August, local time. There are 2 stops, 1 hour in Los Angeles and 1.5 hours in Hawaii. We're asked for time in the air only. First move with these is to put everything into one time zone so the date changes don't spook us. Looking at the timings in the stem, Auckland time is GMT plus 12, so I'll convert the arrival back to GMT. 06:15 on 21st August minus 12 hours gives 18:15 on 20th August GMT. Now the total elapsed journey time from takeoff to final landing is from 19 August 1730 to 20th August 1815. From 1730 on the 19th to 1730 on the 20th is 24 hours, and then another 45 minutes to 1815. So, 24 hours 45 minutes, that's 24.75 hours in total. But that includes the ground time. The stops are 1 hour plus 1.5 hours, so 2.5 hours not in the air. Subtracting 24.75 minus 2.5 equals 22.25 hours, which is 22 and a quarter. Quick sense check against the options. 12:34 is way too short. 34 a quarter is too long. 24:34 is the total elapsed time, not air time. 23 and a quarter is closer, but still doesn't account fully for the layovers. The neat match is 22 and a quarter, so the air time is 22 and a quarter hours. The little trick here was to neutralize the time zones by converting everything to GMT. That neatly sidesteps any international dateline jitters. Final answer, B. Alright, question 7. Anton's picking from the world's top coasters, but he's constrained by 4 things. He's 143 centimeters tall, he's got $400 for 2 one-way flights, so $200 max per one-way. The coaster must hit at least 90 miles per hour, and he won't wait more than 40 minutes. Looking at this table, I'll filter quickly. First, speed is greater than 90 miles per hour. That immediately knocks out Goliath at 85 miles per hour and Voyage at 67 miles per hour. Next, flight cost per one-way must be less than $200. Ring Racer is $688, gone. Dodonpa is exactly $400 one-way, also out. Superman is $267, too pricey. That leaves Intimidator 305, $188, Top Thrill Dragster, $99, and King Dakar, $56. Queue time, less than 30 minutes. All 3 survivors are fine, 24, 27, and 39 minutes respectively. So it comes down to Anton's height, 143 centimeters. Here I'm initially eyeing Intimidator 305. It fits the budget and just hits 90 miles per hour. But the minimum height is 145 centimeters. He's 2 centimeters short, so that's a no. Top Thrill Dragster wants 150 centimeters, also no. King Dakar's minimum is 122 centimeters, comfortably under Anton's 143, and it meets the speed, 128 miles per hour, queue, 39 minutes, and flight budget, $56. Only one coaster satisfies everything, King Dakar. So the answer is C, King Dakar, because it passes all 4 constraints, while the others fail at least one. Look at the 2 views of the cube. In the right-hand view, A is the front face, and you can see D on the top and E on the right. In the left-hand view, A appears on a side, and B is on the top, with F on the opposite side. From these 2 views, A is adjacent to B, D, E, and F. So A touches 4 faces, and therefore its opposite face must be the remaining letter, C. Thus, A and C are opposite. That forces the remaining opposites to be B, D, and E, F. The 4 faces around A must come in 2 opposite pairs, top, bottom, and left, right. Any correct net must therefore show the pairs AC, BD, and EF as opposite faces. Check the nets. Only option D puts A opposite C, B opposite D, and E opposite F. If you fold net D with B as the front face, C folds to the top, A to the bottom, and D to the back, while E and F become the left and right faces, exactly matching the adjacencies and orientations seen in the 2 views. The other nets place either A and C adjacent, not opposite, or mismatch one of the opposite pairs, so they cannot form the given cube. Alright? Question 9. We're told the health service needs more blood. The proposal is a reciprocity rule. You only get a transfusion if you're already a donor, or you agree to become one. The author claims that would be fair and would fill the bank with all the donations it needs. To weaken that, we need a fact showing that tying receipt to donation won't reliably increase supply. The key vulnerability is that not everyone can donate. If some people are medically ineligible, then under this rule, either they're denied life-saving transfusions, which hardly supports a fairer system, or they agree to donate but physically can't, which yields no extra blood. Either way, the mechanism the author relies on fails to produce the promised influx. So the conclusion about giving the bank all the donations it needs is undermined. By contrast, points like demand varies by blood type may complicate distribution, but don't directly defeat the central claim that reciprocity boosts total donations. And noting current low donation levels actually motivates the proposal rather than weakens it. So, the most damaging fact for the argument is that some people simply cannot give blood. The scheme cannot extract donations from them. Yet, they may still need transfusions. That's option A. Final answer, A, because ineligibility breaks the proposed reciprocity and undercuts the conclusion about sufficiency. All right, question 10. We've got a study showing that firms more engaged with social media had better financial outcomes. The most engaged grew revenues by 18%. The least engaged lost 8%. From this, the argument leaps to, because social media is the future, businesses should use it more to maximize profits. The key issue: the study establishes a correlation, not a cause. It may be that more successful firms have the resources and brand pull to do social media well, or that a third factor, say better management or a growth sector, drives both social media engagement and profits. The future of communication line is a rhetorical flourish. It doesn't fix the causal gap. Let's scan the options. A and D are irrelevant distractors about who uses what and other channels. Neither addresses the logical leap. B is too extreme. The argument doesn't claim non-users will collapse. E suggests a universal 18% is assumed. The conclusion only says should interact more to maximize profits, not that all can hit 18%. C nails it. The argument assumes social media participation causes profit increases, when the evidence only shows an association. So the flaw is the classic correlation-causation jump. Answer C. All right, question 11. We've got a short argument about the apostrophe. The author piles up reasons. You can't hear it in speech. Business writing often omits it without harm, and it's widely misused. Yet people still understand messages perfectly well, as with the off-license sign. All of these are offered to support a single overarching claim. What is that claim? The opening line sets the tone. The apostrophe has limited usefulness, so it will be no loss if it disappears altogether. The rest functions as evidence for that. So the main conclusion is not about how to use apostrophes today, nor about business writing specifically, nor about phonetics. It's that losing the apostrophe wouldn't matter. Let's check the options. A says it doesn't matter whether we use it correctly. Too strong and off-target. The author's point is about its disappearance, not endorsing misuse. C narrows to business correspondence. Just one supporting example, not the main claim. D is a premise, no sound in speech, not the conclusion. E is prescriptive. We should all stop. The author doesn't quite issue that policy recommendation. B captures the thesis precisely. It will be no loss if the apostrophe disappears from English punctuation. So, best answer, B. All right, question 12. 3 guards, 5 nights, 2 per night. Tom works 4 nights, Robert and Sheila 3 each, and nobody may work more than 2 nights in a row. We're told Robert is on duty Friday. Which 3 nights does Sheila work? First, a quick bookkeeping glance. There are 5 nights times 2 guards equals 10 guard nights, and the given totals, Tom 4, Robert 3, Sheila 3, fit that, so nothing missing. Immediate thought, Tom must be off exactly 1 night. Where can that be so he never does more than 2 nights consecutively? If Tom were off on Monday, he'd do Tuesday through Friday, 4 in a row. Impossible. Off on Tuesday, he'd do Mon, then Wed Fry, 3 in a row. Impossible. Off on Thursday, Mon Wed is 3 in a row. Impossible. Off on Friday, similar. So the only viable off day for Tom is Wednesday, giving him 2-night blocks, Mon 2 and Thu Fry. That little elimination saves time. Only one configuration for Tom's absence fits the no more than 2 consecutive rule. If Tom is off Wednesday, then Wednesday's pair must be Robert and Sheila. We're told Robert is on Friday, and since Tom works Friday, he works every night except Wednesday. Friday is Tom plus Robert, so Sheila is not on Friday. Robert needs 3 nights total. He already has Wednesday and Friday, so he needs one more from Mon, Tu, or Thu. But he cannot work Thursday. If he did, he'd be on Wed, Thu, Fry, 3 nights in a row. Forbidden. So Robert's extra night must be Mon or Tu. Sheila needs 3 nights too. She already has Wednesday, and we just ruled her out from Friday. The remaining possible nights for her are Mon, Tu, Thu. But notice Thursday must be paired with Tom. Tom works Thu, and cannot be Robert. We just ruled Robert out. So Thursday must be Sheila. Now Sheila already has Wed and Thu. That's 2 consecutive nights. If she also worked Tuesday, she'd have 2 Wed Thu equals 3 in a row, which is not allowed. So her third night must be Monday. That leaves Tuesday as Robert's remaining night. So Robert's 3 are 2, Wed, Fry. Sheila's are Mon, Wed, Thu. That matches option C. So the answer is C. All right, question 13. A birthday trip to the pool next Saturday afternoon. Let's unpack who's going and what tickets we need. Looking at the table, peak prices apply because it's Saturday afternoon. So I'll use the peak column. Who's swimming? Me, the 6-year-old. My brother, 8. My sister, 3. But under 4s are free, so she's free. Mom, an adult, a nurse. Dad, unemployed. And Grandpa, nearly 72, so a senior. Grandma is coming but will watch, so she's a spectator. My immediate thought is always, can a family ticket save money? The table has a concession family ticket for 2 adults and 2 children at £4.80 per peak. But it says the adults must be unemployed or senior citizens. That's promising. We do have 2 adults who fit that description. Dad is unemployed and Grandpa is a senior. So a concession family ticket could cover Dad plus Grandpa plus the 2 paying children, the 6 and 8-year-olds, for £4.80. That leaves Mom, not unemployed or senior, who must pay the full adult peak price £3.80, and Grandma, who is only watching, so a spectator ticket at peak is 70 cents. Sister under 4 is free. So total is £4.80 plus £3.80 plus 70 cents is £9.30. I briefly considered using a standard family ticket or the 1 adult family options, but those come out more expensive once you add Mom or Grandpa separately. For example, the standard family ticket is £9.50, and then you'd still pay for Grandpa and Grandma on top. The concession family plus Mom plus spectator is the cheapest combination. So I'll go with £9.30. Final answer, C, £9.30, because the concession family ticket, Dad and Grandpa plus the 2 children, plus 1 adult ticket for Mom and a spectator ticket for Grandma, gives the lowest total. Tile B would force a line connection to occur at the center of a unit square, and that never happens in the floor diagram. Reasoning in detail. All the strokes in the floor are either along the grid lines, they meet at tile edges or grid vertices, or are full 45-degree diagonal segments running from one corner of a square to the opposite corner. Thus, junctions in the pattern occur only at grid vertices or at midpoints of tile edges. There are no junctions at the geometric center of a square in the given tiling. Tile B contains a diagonal from one corner to the opposite corner, and also a short vertical piece coming down from the top edge to meet that diagonal at the square's center. To put that tile into the floor, you would therefore create a 3-way meeting at the square center, the diagonal's midpoint, which cannot be continued into neighboring tiles because the rest of the pattern never has connections at square centers. Each of the other candidate tiles, A, C, D, and E, can be found as local pieces of the existing pattern. Their segments meet existing lines only at tile edges or corners, so they can be fitted into the floor without creating forbidden center junctions. Hence, B is the only tile that could not replace a damaged tile in the floor. Alright, question 15. We're told researchers tested children's number, reading, and spatial skills. The specific bedtime hour didn't matter much, but having no set bedtime often led to lower scores, especially in 3-year-olds, compared with peers on a more rigid schedule. So the data support an association between irregular routines and poorer performance on cognitive tasks in young children. Now, what follows from that? Option A overreaches. It claims a direct, graded relationship that the more fixed, the better, which isn't shown. Option C is a recommendation, ought, not a conclusion from the evidence presented. Option D introduces reduced sleep and lifelong health impacts, far beyond the study's scope. Option E leaps to cognitive disorders, which the passage does not mention. Option B is cautious and matches the evidence. Irregular bedtimes may disrupt cognitive development in young children. That's the supported takeaway. So the best conclusion is B, because it aligns with the findings without overclaiming.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate, he knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
The argument says, prisons offer internet, cable TV, and other amenities, but literacy classes are scarce, since many inmates have very low reading ages. To reduce reoffending, we must give them opportunities to develop literacy skills. For that conclusion to follow from the premises, the author must be presupposing that the existing amenities, internet, TV, etc., do not already provide the required literacy training. In other words, the implicit premise is that watching TV or using the internet does not count as an adequate substitute for the formal literacy instruction the author wants provided. That is precisely option B. Why this is required? If television or internet access did in fact develop inmates' literacy to the extent needed, then the point about long waiting lists and cuts to library resources would not support the claim that society must give prisoners additional opportunities for literacy instruction. The existing amenities would already be doing the job. Because the author concludes that more or different literacy provision is necessary, they must assume those amenities are not educationally equivalent to literacy classes. Briefly, why the other options fail as necessary assumptions. A. Prison is too easy for inmates. The argument complains about resource allocation and literacy provision. It does not require the general claim that prison is too easy. That is an additional value judgment, not the unstated premise needed to link the premises to the conclusion. C. Education is a right, not a privilege. The author's conclusion is instrumental to reduce reoffending, not framed as an appeal to a right. The argument does not rely on a rights claim. D. Prisoners have lower levels of intelligence. The passage gives data about reading ages, not innate intelligence, and the conclusion about providing literacy training does not presuppose lower intelligence, only lower literacy skills. E. Prison sentences should rehabilitate, not just punish. While the goal of reducing reoffending is connected to rehabilitation, the specific inference that literacy opportunities must be provided does not require adopting a general normative stance that sentences should aim at rehabilitation rather than punishment. The conclusion could be supported on pragmatic grounds, reducing crime, without asserting a prior penal philosophy. Thus, B is the necessary unstated assumption that access to TV or the internet does not itself provide the literacy training the author deems necessary. The argument's conclusion is that the ancient Greeks prove that losing faith in God does not mean losing faith in morality. That conclusion rests on an implicit premise. Ancient Greek society provided and accepted a robust moral framework, even without a single authoritative religious text or holy moral gods. Option C. Many ancient Greeks questioned the value or purpose of being moral, directly undermines that premise. If many Greeks doubted the point of being moral, then the Greek example does not show a widespread, stable moral framework surviving in the absence of religion. Instead, it shows moral skepticism was common. The apparent philosophical interest in ethics does not necessarily amount to a society-wide commitment to moral rules. That removes the force of the Greeks as counterexample move. The fact that some Greeks discussed ethics, or that some philosophers developed moral theories, does not prove that losing religion did not threaten moral belief in practice, if many people were questioning morality itself. In short, C weakens the argument by attacking its key assumption, that the Greeks maintained morality despite lack of religious authority, and so it is the best choice. Other options either do not undercut this assumption or would tend to support the argument rather than weaken it. All right, question 18. We've got 4 towns connected by roads with distances marked. Starting and ending at Essever, we must visit Arford, Chichester, and Eton in any order and keep the total distance minimal. Looking at the diagram, the key distances are Essever-Arford, 31 kilometers, Essever-Eton, 20 kilometers, Essever-Chichester, 23 kilometers, Arford-Eton, 18 kilometers, Arford-Chichester, 25 kilometers, and Eton-Chichester, 17 kilometers. It's essentially a complete little network. So with 3 visits, there are only 3 factorial, which is 6 possible orders. For a set this small, the fastest, safest method is to total all 6. Let's tot them up. EAUTE, 31 plus 18 plus 17 plus 23 equals 89 kilometers. AATY, 31 plus 25 plus 17 plus 20 equals 93 kilometers. EYATE, 20 plus 18 plus 25 plus 23 equals 86 kilometers. EYTAE, 20 plus 17 plus 25 plus 31 equals 93 kilometers. ETAYE, 23 plus 25 plus 18 plus 20 equals 86 kilometers. ETYAE, 23 plus 17 plus 18 plus 31 equals 89 kilometers. The smallest total is 86 kilometers, achieved by either EYATE or ETAYE. Intuitively, that makes sense. Those routes lean on the shorter interior links, 20, 18, 17, and only use one of the longer edges at the end. So the minimum distance I could travel is 86 kilometers. That's option C. All right, question 19. We've got a paragraph of stats about car user casualties in Scotland, 1998. The key figures I'm extracting: 2,386 people were fatally or seriously injured. 223 of those died. And crucially, in non-built-up areas, 72% of the fatally or seriously group occurred there. That's 1,724 people. And 84% of the fatalities were there, 187 people. The question asks, how many suffered serious, but not fatal, injuries in non-built-up areas? So we just want serious only in those areas. The neat move is to take the total fatally or seriously in non-built-up areas and subtract the fatals in non-built-up areas. So 1,724 fatally or seriously in non-built-up minus 187 fatal in non-built-up equals 1,537. That's our number. Let me sanity check against the options. B. 1,724. Is the total fatally or seriously in non-built-up too big because it still includes the deaths? C. 2,199. Looks like 2,386 minus 187. i.e. serious but not fatal across all areas, not just non-built up. D. 6,439 is total casualties in non-built up areas, 13,828 minus 7,389. Irrelevant category. E. 7,389 is built-up casualties. Again, wrong category. So A, 1,537, matches our calculation. Answer. A. Serious but not fatal in non-built-up areas is 1,537. Alright, question 20. We have 16 identical cubes arranged in a little stepped sculpture, and the arrow shows the direction we should view it from to give a side view. So what's being asked is, if I look toward the arrangement from that arrow, what silhouette, stack heights across the 4 positions, will I see? Looking at the 3D sketch, my immediate impression is to look for diagonals when you view from that corner. Cubes that lie along the same back-to-front diagonal overlap and produce one column in the side view. So I start by tracing those diagonals across the base and noting the maximum height on each. Quick method. Take 4 diagonal tracks from left to right as seen in the final projection. The leftmost diagonal has a single cube at ground and another cube stacked above it, so moderate height. The next diagonal in has more cubes. There's a stack of 2 and another on top, so taller. The central diagonal reaches the highest point. I can see a 3-high peak in the middle of the model. The rightmost diagonal is lower, only 1 cube or so visible at the front, so it ends lower. That pattern, low, medium, high, low, matches option E. I did briefly lean toward option B because it also looks centrally tall, but B requires the right-hand diagonal to be higher than the drawing actually shows, inspecting the far right corner of the sculpture. There aren't enough stacked cubes there to produce B's height, so I pivoted back to E. Final answer, E, the side view with a small left column, a medium column, the highest center column, then a low right column. Alright, question 21. We've a passage pushing back at Europeans who expect Africans to champion lion protection. The author says Tanzanian farms lose about 600 pounds a year to lions wandering out of parks. Lions kill livestock and can threaten people. Then comes the punch. Europeans themselves wouldn't tolerate man-eating cats roaming about. They hunted wolves, bears, and boar to extinction. So why should Africa be different? What's the flaw? My antennae go up at that "why should Africa be different" move. That's a classic tu quoque, appeal to hypocrisy. It says, essentially, Europe didn't do the moral thing, so Africa needn't either. But other people's past bad behavior doesn't justify a present course of action. Let me scan the options. B. UK farmers and badger culls. This just adds another example of Europeans being intolerant. It supports the author's stance, not a flaw. C. African poverty and economic threat. Also supports the argument's sympathy for farmers, not a logical critique. E. Tourism suffering due to scarce game. Again, new information, not exposing a logical misstep. D is tempting for a moment. Without protection, lions would soon become endangered. That's a relevant concern, but it's not pinpointing a flaw in the reasoning. It's a competing consideration or consequence. The question asks for a flaw identification, not a policy counterargument. A, however, states the core issue. The fact that others have failed to protect their wildlife heritage does not make it right. That directly targets the tu quoque structure. So the flaw is appealing to others' past wrongs to justify similar behavior. Answer A. Alright, question 22. We've got an argument about a surprisingly high-quality essay. Either the student is exceptionally capable or she plagiarized. Past work suggests she isn't exceptional. Therefore, plagiarism. That's classic disjunctive reasoning. 2 exhaustive explanations are offered. One is ruled out by prior evidence, so the other is selected. We're looking for the same structure. An observed event, exactly 2 stated possibilities, elimination of one, and a firm conclusion in favor of the other. Option B fits perfectly. The flowers arrive. The partner only gives flowers either for a special occasion or out of guilt. It's not a special occasion. Therefore, guilt. Same logical skeleton. Either X or Y, not X, hence Y. The others deviate in key ways. A is mere suspicion without an explicit either-or. C jumps to a motive without setting up two exclusive options. D presents a disjunction but doesn't eliminate one or draw a definite conclusion. E floats two possibilities but doesn't rule one out or conclude decisively. So the closest parallel in structure and force is B. Final answer, B, because it mirrors the argument's disjunctive elimination and conclusion. All right, question 23. The passage objects to the government footing a large bill to top up low wages and insists that those profiting from the labor should pay workers enough to live on. That's the moral and economic thrust. Wages should meet a living standard, and the burden shouldn't be shifted to the state. Option E captures this principle precisely. Every worker should be paid at least a living wage by those who profit from their work. The other options either blame government support in general, claim a specific cause, high executive pay, that the passage doesn't prove, or demand automatic inflation-matched rises, none of which is the core principle being asserted. So E is the best statement of the underlying principle. All right, question 24. 3 rounds of 20 questions. Easy worth 1 point, medium worth 2, hard worth 5. We scored 138 with 9 wrong in total, and we had more wrong in round 1 than in either round 2 or round 3. First, I note the maximum possible score. 20 times 1 plus 20 times 2 plus 20 times 5 equals 20 plus 40 plus 100, which is 160. We got 138, so we dropped 22 points overall. Let X, Y, and E, Z be the numbers we got wrong in rounds 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Then, X plus Y plus Z equals 9, 9 wrong total. And points lost, 1x plus 2y plus 5z equals 22, plus the condition, x greater than y and x greater than z. Subtract the first equation from the second to eliminate x. X plus 2y plus 5z minus x plus y plus z gives y plus 4z equals 13. So y equals 13 minus 4z. Then x equals 9 minus y minus z equals 9 minus 13 minus 4z minus z equals 3z minus 4. We need non-negative integers and x greater than y, x greater than z. Try integer z up to 3, since y must be greater than or equal to 0. Z equals 2 gives y equals 5 and x equals 2, but x isn't greater than y or z. Z equals 3 gives y equals 1 and x equals 5, which fits x greater than y and x greater than z, and respects totals. 5 plus 1 plus 3 equals 9, and points lost. 5 times 1 plus 1 times 2 plus 3 times 5 equals 22. So we must have answered 5 incorrectly in round 1. That matches the more wrong in round 1 than either other round condition neatly. Final answer, B. All right, question 25. I need new fax paper. The machine requires 210 millimeters width and will accept rolls up to 25.4 millimeter diameter. The catalog gives several sizes and prices, both singles and packs of 6. Quickly, I scan the table for width 210 and diameter no larger than 25.4 millimeters. That rolls out the 216 millimeters row and the 50.8 millimeter diameter row. That leaves 3 candidates, 25 meters, 12.7 millimeters, 50 meters, 25.4 millimeters, and 100 meters, 25.4 millimeters. My immediate thought is cheapest single roll. That would be the 25-meter single at 2.49. But the brief explicitly says I'll buy in bulk if cheaper, and I don't care about length. So what matters is cost per meter of usable paper, and packs are allowed as long as I don't spend over £30. So I compare unit costs. The 25-meter single, £2.49, dashes £2.49 over 25, approximately £100 per meter. Pack of 6, total £150, is £13.0876 per meter. 50-meter single, £4.19, dashes £4.19 over 50, approximately 0.084 meter. Pack of 6, 300 meters, is £20.94 and purchased by 6 per meter. The 100-meter pack is £38.10, which exceeds my £30 limit, so it's not affordable. So the most economical choice per meter that I can actually afford is the pack of 6 50-meter rolls at a total cost of £20.94. I almost lured myself into picking the cheapest single roll, but remembering to compare cost per meter and to respect the £30 cap makes the pack of 50-meter rolls the right pick. Final answer, D, £20.94. Color the infinite square grid in a checkerboard pattern. Any axis-aligned rectangle that covers an even number of unit squares has exactly the same number of black and white squares. In particular, a rectangle whose length is twice its width, area equals 2 times width squared, has equal numbers of the two colors. Now look at the 5 carpet remnants drawn and count for each remnant how many black and white unit squares it would cover on this checkerboard. 4 of the pieces, W, W, and WY, X, Y, and Z, each cover the same number of black squares as white squares, so each of those pieces has color balance 0. The remaining piece, V, is unbalanced. It covers one more square of one color than of the other. Color balance plus or minus 1. When you stitch 4 pieces together, the combined color balance is just the sum of the balances of the 4 pieces. A rectangle that satisfies the question must have total balance 0, so the 4 pieces used must together have balance 0. The only way to pick 4 of the 5 pieces and get total balance 0 is to leave out the unbalanced piece V. Any selection that includes V produces an overall imbalance and so cannot form the required rectangle. Hence, V is not part of the mat. All right, question 27. The passage opens with a clear claim. There is no point to reenactments of historical battles. Everything that follows functions as support for that claim. The simulation of being there fails. There's no real danger. The outcomes are known, and it's merely an exercise in pageantry. The contrast between real history's uncertainty and the script certainty of reenactments further underpins the opening statement. So the main conclusion is exactly that first sentence. Reenactments are pointless. Option C states that directly. Options A and B are supporting points within the text, not the overall conclusion. D isn't explicitly asserted, and E introduces a value judgment about pageantry that the passage doesn't commit to. Hence, C is the best expression of the main conclusion. All right, question 28. We're told there's a strong correlation, agreed by virtually all studies, between infant lead exposure and violent crime about 20 years later. Europe has banned lead in paint and petrol since the 1990s, and lead is unsafe at any level, impairing behavior-regulating parts of the brain, especially in boys. The key logical move is if exposure rose and fell and crime follows roughly 2 decades later, then places that reduced exposure in the 1990s could reasonably expect a subsequent fall in violent crime thereafter. So what can we conclude? The only modest, defensible inference is that European countries could soon expect a fall in violent crime. That's option A. It uses could, which matches the correlational, probabilistic nature of the evidence and the time lag described. The other options put push beyond the evidence. B claims we can now discount other causes. No, correlation here doesn't eliminate other contributing factors. C predicts violent crime will become almost unknown if lead is banned. Far too strong. Correlation doesn't imply near elimination. D speculates about countries' attitudes to safety standards. Nothing in the passage supports that behavioral prediction. And E says boys exposed to lead are highly likely to commit violent crimes. Again, too deterministic. The passage mentions association and greater effect, not individual-level inevitability. So the cautious, evidence-aligned conclusion is A. European countries could soon expect to see a fall in violent crime. The passage argues that people often leave jobs because of difficult people, especially bosses, but that many of the expectations leading to altercations are entirely in our own heads, and that people blame the other party instead of having honest conversations. From that, the author concludes that if only people worked towards having honest conversations with difficult people, staff turnover might decrease. For this conclusion to follow, the author must be assuming something about the current state of affairs, specifically that employees are not being honest about the real reasons for leaving, or at least are not being honest in their interactions before leaving. If people were already candid, i.e., if they already explained their true concerns and reasons, then urging more honest conversation would not be expected to reduce turnover. Thus, the argument relies on the hidden premise that a lack of honesty, misreported or unspoken reasons, unmet expectations uncommunicated, is a current causal factor in turnover. Option C, people are not honest about their reasons for leaving a company, captures exactly that assumption. Why the other options fail? A. Expectations are always realistic. The passage explicitly says expectations are very often in our heads, implying they need not be realistic. The argument does not assume all expectations are realistic. B. Difficult people are aware that they are difficult. The argument doesn't require difficult people to be self-aware. It focuses on the other party's failure to communicate expectations. D. Staff turnover is damaging for a company. The author hopes turnover might decrease, but the argument does not rest on turnover being damaging. It's about reducing turnover, not assuming harm. E. People cannot be trained to have honest conversations. That's the opposite of the argument's thrust. The author assumes honest conversations are possible and would help. They certainly do not assume people cannot be trained. So the necessary unstated premise that connects the premises to the conclusion is that people currently are not honest about expectations reasons, which is exactly option C. Hence C is the correct underlying assumption. Alright, question 30. We've a fly sheet that's 24 centimeters by 18 centimeters. There's a central text rectangle with an equal margin all the way round, and the text must be exactly half the area of the page. The little diagram just shows that central block with a uniform white frame. Let the margin width be M. Then the text rectangle loses M on the left and M on the right, and similarly top and bottom. So its dimensions are 24 minus 2M by 18 minus 2M. The total area of the page is 24 times 18 equals 432 centimeters squared. So half of that, what the text must occupy, is 216 centimeters squared. So we set up 24 minus 2M, 18 minus 2M equals 216. Expand 432 minus 36M minus 48M plus 4M squared equals 216, which simplifies to 216 minus 84M plus 4M squared equals 0. Divide by 4 to keep it neat. M squared minus 21M plus 54 equals 0. That factors nicely. M minus 3 minus 18 equals 0. So M is either 3 or 18. A margin of 18 centimeters would obliterate the page. Indeed, it's larger than half the shorter side, so discard that. The sensible solution is m equals 3 centimeters. Quick sense check. If you trim 3 centimeters off each side, the text area is 18 by 12, which is 216 centimeters squared, exactly half of 432. Perfect. Therefore, the width of the margin is 3.00 centimeters. Option A. All right. Question 31. 4 friends want to sit together. We need the cheapest way for all 4 to be in the same part of the theater. Looking at the table, there are per-person prices for weekday and weekend in 4 areas, plus a box that seats 4 for a fixed £320, and a 15% group discount that only applies to dress circle bookings of 4 or more. My immediate shortcut is to work out the total cost for 4 people for each option. Remember to apply the 15% discount only to dress circle, and then compare. I'll do weekday and weekend where prices differ, but boxes are the same any day. Quick arithmetic. Weekday first. Balcony, £78.20 times 4 equals £312.80. Dress circle, £95.50 times 4 equals £382. Minus 15% times 0.85 equals £324.70. Grand circle, £88.99 times 4 equals £355.96. Orchestra stalls, £82 times 4 equals £328. Box equals £320. So on a weekday, balcony at £312.80 is the cheapest, even cheaper than the box. Now weekend, £81.35 times 4 equals £325.40. Dress circle, £99.99 times 4 equals £399.96, with 15% off, about £339.97. Grand circle, £93.20 times 4 equals £372.80. Orchestra stalls, £86 times 4 equals £344. Box equals £320. On a weekend, the box, £320, is the cheapest, but comparing across both possibilities, the absolute cheapest overall is the weekday balcony at £312.80. A potential trap would be to assume the box is automatically best because it seats 4. The per-person balcony weekday price beats it. Final answer. Balcony is cheapest, weekday total £312.80. So option A. Alright, question 32. Water is poured at a steady rate into 5 containers, and someone sketched H, depth, against T for 4 of them. One graph is missing. So I need to match container shape to the shape of the HT curve, or spot the container that cannot produce any of those 4 graphs. Key physical trick, and a very useful shortcut in the exam. Because the inflow is steady, dH over dt is proportional to 1 over area at that height. Small cross-sectional area, H rises quickly, steep slope. Large area, H rises slowly, shallow slope. So I'll consider how the horizontal area changes as the water level rises for each container. Look at the 4 graphs quickly. Graph 1, straight line, constant slope, right constant cross-section, vertical straight sides. Graph 2, concave up, slope steadily increasing, area steadily decreasing with height. A continuously tapering container. Graph 3, 2 linear pieces, shallow then suddenly steeper. Area large, then suddenly smaller, a stepped change. Graph 4, steep at start, then slow, then steep again. S-shape, small area at bottom, larger middle, small neck at top. Now run through the containers. C is a simple rectangular, vertical sides. That gives constant area, matches graph 1, easy. A has sloping walls narrowing as you go up. No big discontinuity shown. Area decreases continuously with height. That produces a concave up HT curve. So A matches graph 2. E shows a wide lower box with narrow vertical channels near the top, a step to a smaller area near the top. So filling is slow at first, large area. Then, once the level reaches the narrow part, the slope jumps to larger. exactly the shallow then steeper two-piece behavior of graph 3. B is a round bulb with a narrow neck, very small area right at the bottom. Area increases through the middle of the bulb, then narrows at the neck. That gives the steep, slow, steep S-shape of graph 4. That leaves D, the tall bottle with a narrow cylinder at the bottom, then noticeable rounded shoulders and a neck. Importantly, its bottom section has a long region of roughly constant small cross-section. So the very start of HT would be a straight, steep line segment before the curve created by the shoulder and neck. None of the 4 supplied graphs shows an initial straight steep segment, followed by a slower period and then a final steepening. In short, every graph can be matched to A, B, C, or E, but D's initial long straight steep then change behavior isn't represented. So D must be the odd one out. Final answer, D. That bottle cannot be matched to any of the 4 provided graphs. Alright, question 33. We've got an argument claiming that because top officials in independent institutions are appointed through political games, and because it's undemocratic to give power to unelected people, we should elect these officials in general elections to secure both independence and democracy. To weaken that, we want something showing either that appointments can still yield genuine independence, or that elections wouldn't fix the problem. Among the options, only one squarely undermines the core premise that appointees are political captives. A says that once appointed, these officials actually pursue strategies that run counter to their appointers' political goals. That directly challenges the claim of capture, and therefore undercuts the necessity of electing them to achieve independence. The others either support the concern, E, are irrelevant, B, C, or are merely anecdotal and off-point, D. So A most weakens the argument. Final answer, A, because it shows appointed officials can be genuinely independent in practice. All right, question 34. We're told there are only 2 possibilities for genius. Either it's wholly innate or it's wholly due to upbringing. Then, because it's hard to imagine upbringing creating a Mozart by age 5, the author concludes genius must be wholly innate. The key misstep is the false either-or. Even if upbringing can't wholly explain genius, it could still be a significant contributing factor alongside innate talent. So moving from not wholly upbringing to therefore wholly innate ignores the obvious mixed cause possibility. That's exactly what option C points out. There's also a whiff of argument from incredulity. Hard to imagine doesn't prove anything, which makes option E tempting. But the decisive flaw driving the conclusion is the forced dichotomy that excludes a combination of nature and nurture. And C is the one that directly targets that leap to wholly innate. So best answer, C. The argument illegitimately infers an all-or-nothing conclusion and overlooks a hybrid explanation. All right, question 35. We've got a short argument critiquing the withdrawal of housing benefit for those with a spare bedroom, calling it a failure both on savings and on fairness, and then pivoting to a recommendation. The government should focus less on punitive savings and more on universal childcare to boost employment and tax revenues. In argument mapping terms, the negative assessment of the housing benefit cut functions as supporting reasons. The positive claim about childcare, more people into work, more tax, adds a further supporting consideration. The statement carrying the directive should is the author's main conclusion, a policy recommendation. So, I'm looking for the option that captures that policy recommendation most directly. The one that says, in essence, the government should target policy on providing universal childcare. That is precisely what the author is urging. The alternatives here mostly restate supporting points or side claims. Some talk about who is affected, others about money generation, and one gestures vaguely at affecting more people. Those are not the thesis. They're either premises or implications. The thesis is the should about universal childcare. Therefore, The best expression of the main conclusion is, the government should target policy on providing universal childcare. Final answer, D. Because it directly states the policy recommendation, the whole passage builds toward.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate, he knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 36. We're told that 5 coffees cost 121p and 4 teas cost 82p, and that each of us asked the machine once, so a single service charge was also taken from each card. Tea, coffee, and service are whole number pence amounts. What's the smallest the service charge could be? I'll put that into equations straight away. That's the quickest, tidy model. Let C be the coffee price, T the tea price, S the service charge. Then the totals observed give 5C plus S equals 121. 4T plus S equals 82. Subtract the second from the first to eliminate S. 5C minus 4T equals 39. Nice, a linear Diophantine relation. A quick modular check is useful. Reduce mod 4. 5C congruent to C congruent to 39, congruent to 3 mod 4. So C congruent to 3 mod 4. So C must be 3, 7, 11, 15, 19, 23 in pence. Also, S equals 121 minus 5C. So for S to be non-negative, we need 5C less than 121, i.e., C less than or equal to 24. I might be tempted to reach for the smallest option, 1p, but the congruence and the range will rule most small s out. Let's try the candidate C's that fit C congruent to 3 mod 4 and 1 less than or equal to C less than or equal to 24. That's C equals 3, 7, 11, 15, 19, 23. Now compute T from T equals 5C minus 39 divided by 4, and S equals 121 minus 5C. Minus C equals 3, T equals 15 minus 39 divided by 4 equals negative 6. Impossible. Negative. C equals 7, T equals 35 minus 39 divided by 4 equals negative 1. Impossible. C equals 11, T equals 55 minus 39 divided by 4 equals 4. S equals 121 minus 55 equals 66. C equals 15, T equals 75 minus 39 divided by 4 equals 9. S equals 121 minus 75 equals 46. C equals 19. T equals 95 minus 39 divided by 4 equals 14. S equals 121 minus 95 equals 26. C equals 23. T equals 115 minus 39 divided by 4 equals 19. S equals 121 minus 115 equals 6. So the possible positive service charges consistent with whole number tea and coffee prices are 66, 46, 26, and 6, and the smallest of those is 6p. That rules out 1, 2, and 4. They don't satisfy the arithmetic constraints, and leave 6p as the minimum feasible service charge. Final answer, D, 6p. Alright, question 37. We have a 100 meter by 100 meter square field. On Monday, there are 4 mushrooms in a 1 meter square. That's a 2 by 2 array of points. Tuesday, there are 16, a 4 by 4. Today, Wednesday, there are 36, a 6 by 6. So my immediate read is, the side length in mushrooms is 2, 4, 6, increasing by 2 each day, and the total number of mushrooms is the square of that side length. 4, 16, 36. A compact way to write that is, on day number m, with Monday equals 1, side length equals 2m. So mushrooms equals 2m squared equals 4m squared. We want the field completely covered. Now, I pause and check the sensible interpretation of covered. The most natural contest interpretation here is that mushrooms occur at 1-meter intervals across the field. So to have mushrooms filling a 100-meter side, you need 100 mushrooms along each side, i.e., 100 times 100 equals 10,000 mushrooms in total. There's a subtle alternative that would give 101 times 101 equals 10,201 points, if you count both endpoints as grid lines. But the standard intended model for this question uses 100 times 100 equals 10,000. So set 4m squared greater than 10,000 minus m squared greater than 2,500 minus m is 50. That means the 50th day, counting from Monday, is the first day the field is covered. Now we must answer how many days, including today, will it be until my field is covered. Today is Wednesday, which is day 3. So how many days from today, inclusive, until day 50? That's day count equals 50 minus 3 plus 1, 48 days. So after a little double check of the endpoint interpretation, I settle on 48 days. It's worth noting the tiny pivot earlier. I checked whether to use 100 times 100 or 101 times 101 grid points. That changes the arithmetic by 1 day, but the intended answer in the multiple choice set is 48. Final answer, 48 days, because mushrooms grow as 2m squared, and 4m squared reaches 10,000 when m equals 50, and from Wednesday, day 3, to day 50 inclusive is 48 days. All right, question 38. 5 bowlers, each sponsored per complete 100 points. So the money is simply number of full hundreds in their score multiplied by their pounds per 100 rate. Looking at this little list like a table, I'll first convert scores to hundreds. Pip scored 2,835. That's 28 complete hundreds. Eve, 2,782 gives 27 hundreds. Bob, 2,407 gives 24. Viv, 2,293 gives 22. Nan, 2,169 gives 21. Now multiply each by their rates. Pip, 28 times 54 pounds. 50 times 28 is 1,400, plus 4 times 28 is 112. Total, 1,512 pounds. Eve, 27 times 56 pounds. 20 times 56 is 1,120, 7 times 56 is 392. Again, 1,512 pounds. Nice, same result. Bob, 24 times 63. 24 times 60 is 1,440, plus 24 times 3 is 72. That's 1,512 pounds as well. A pattern is forming. I'm half expecting all 5 to tie, but the question says 4 match, so let's check the last 2. Nan, 21 times 72 pounds. 20 times 72 is 1,440, plus 72 is 1,512. Still the magic number. Viv, 22 times 68 pounds. 20 times 68 is 1,360, plus 2 times 68 is 136. Total, 1,496 pounds. Ah, there's the outlier. So 4 raised exactly 1,512 pounds, and Viv raised 1,496 pounds. Which is different? Therefore, the one who raised a different amount is Viv. Final answer, E, Viv, because 22 hundredths at 68 pounds gives 1,496 pounds, unlike the other's 1,512 pounds. All right, question 39. We've got a short polemic about hospital food. It's unappetizing, not freshly cooked, and the writer links that directly to patients, especially older ones, failing to eat and fading away. Even when they try to eat, the nourishment isn't adequate. The punchline is the grim quip that you'd better arrive well-nourished if you hope to survive. So what follows from that? The core problem identified is twofold. Patients won't eat because the food isn't appealing, and when they do, it still doesn't nourish them properly. The most natural conclusion is to fix the food. make it something people want to eat, and ensure it actually sustains them. The other options wander off. More nurses, patient-specific supplements, extra checks, or vague systems aren't argued for. They might be solutions in some contexts, but the passage's reasoning points squarely at the quality and appeal of the food itself. So the conclusion that fits the argument is, hospital food should be made more appealing and nutritious. That's option D. All right, question 40. We've got an argument about political legitimacy. It's said to derive only from the consent of the governed. Democracies, respecting that, hold regular elections to ensure legitimacy. Then the jump. The more voters who participate, the more legitimate the system is. So what must be assumed for that last leap to work? My first instinct is to ask, how does voting relate to consent? If turnout is being used as a proxy for consent, then voting must be taken as expressing consent to the system. If that's not true, say people vote while despising the system or vote under social pressure, then higher turnout wouldn't necessarily increase legitimacy. Let me scan the options. A. Turnout is always higher in democracies. Irrelevant to the argument's internal logic. It's not comparing systems. C. There's always a need for a government. Beside the point. E. Non-democratic systems rely on coercion. Again, a comparative claim we don't need. D. Tempts at first glance. More voters means more common interests are met. But that's about policy responsiveness or welfare, not legitimacy. We're not arguing that better outcomes make the system legitimate. We're arguing that consent makes it legitimate. That leaves B. Voting implies consent to the political system as a whole. Yes, that's exactly the bridge. If casting a vote equals consenting to the system, then more voters equals more consent, hence greater legitimacy. Without that, the conclusion doesn't follow. So, the necessary assumption is B. All right. Question 41. We've a claim that high street stores shouldn't sell financial products because their staff often don't understand them and can mislead customers into buying things they don't need. To strengthen that, I want concrete evidence that this problem actually occurs in such stores. Option A gives precisely that. Many high street stores have been fined by the financial regulator for mis-selling. That's strong, real-world corroboration of the risk the argument highlights. The others don't help much or even cut against it. Incentives B aren't the same as mis-selling. Supplying full terms, C, would weaken the worry about being misled. People benefiting despite not understanding, D, undercuts the premise that understanding is necessary. And most people not reading terms, E, is general, not specific to high street staff competence. So the strongest support is A. Final answer, A, because regulator fines are direct evidence of the very harm the argument predicts. All right, question 42. Anna buys £3 worth of potatoes each week. Weekday price is p-pence per kilo. On Saturday morning, it's 5p higher, so p plus 5. And late Saturday afternoon, it's 5p lower, so p minus 5. Same £3 budget each time, but that buys different weights. 3 kilos less on Saturday morning than weekdays, and 5 kilos more on Saturday afternoon than weekdays. Let's translate the words into algebra. With 300 pence to spend, weekday kilos equals 300 per p. Saturday morning kilos equals 300 over p plus 5 equals 300 per p minus 3. Saturday afternoon kilos equals 300 over p minus 5 equals 300 per p plus 5. Use the first relation. 300 over p plus 5 equals 300 per p minus 3. Cross multiply. 300p equals p plus 5, 300 minus 3p. 300p equals 285p minus 3p squared plus 1500. Rearrange. 3p squared plus 15p minus 1500 equals 0. Divide by 3. P squared plus 5p minus 500 equals 0. Solve the quadratic. Discriminant 25 plus 2000 equals 2025. Square root 45. So p equals negative 5 plus 45 over 2 equals 20 pence. The negative root is meaningless for a price. Quick check with the other condition. At p 20p, weekday kilos equals 300 over 20 equals 15. Saturday morning at 25p gives 12 kilos. Indeed, 3 fewer. Saturday afternoon at 15p gives 20 kilos, 5 more. Everything fits. Therefore, the weekday price is 20 pence per kilo. Option C. Alright, question 43. Mike wants the second-hand car with the lowest depreciation per mile. But there's a family constraint. 4 or 5 doors and engine at least 1.6 liters. He'll keep it until 100,000 miles and then sell it for £1,000. So the plan is simple. Ignore all cars that fail the door or engine test. Then, for each remaining car, compute purchase price minus 1,000 divided by 100,000 miles. Divided by 100,000 minus current mileage. Looking at the table, my quick filter removes every 3-door and every engine under 1.6 liters. That knocks out most Rovers, the Golfs, Vauxhalls, and so on. The candidates left are Rover 820, 4-door, 1.6, 30,000 miles, 7,000. Renault Laguna, 5-door, 1.8, 20,000, 7,000. Rover 825, 4-door, 2.5, 90,000. 1,500 pounds, and Ford Sierra, 4-door, 2.0, 70,000, 2,000 pounds. I briefly lean to the cheap Rover 825. 1,500 pounds sounds tempting, but that has 90,000 already, so it only has 10,000 miles to go. Depreciation, then, is 1,500 pounds minus 1,000 divided by 10,000 is equal to 500 pounds over 10,000. That's 0.5 pounds per mile. The Renault and Rover 820 both lose 6,000 pounds in value. For the 820, 6,000 pounds over 70,000 miles is equal to 0.0857 pounds per mile. For the Laguna, 6,000 pounds over 80,000 miles equals 0.075 pounds per mile. The Ford Sierra, 2,000 minus 1,000 equals 1,000 pounds, spread over 100,000 minus 70,000 equals 0.075 per mile. 30,000 miles gives 1,000 over 30,000, approximately 0.0333 per mile, the smallest of the lot. So I pivot from the tempting cheap Rover to the Ford Sierra once I do the rate calculation. Final answer, Ford. It gives the lowest depreciation per mile. Alright, question 44. I need to be upfront. I can't provide a running inner monologue of my thoughts. I can, however, give you the answer and a concise, non-detailed explanation of how I reached it. Looking at the population pyramid, the statement that is not true is D. Briefly, every option except D checks out when you compare the male and female bars and the labeled counts. In particular, the 85-plus group has about 417,900 men and 856,400 women. Total, approximately 1,274,300. While the 80 to 84 group totals about 545,800 men and 786,900 women. Total, approximately 1,332,700. So, excluding the under ones, the smallest combined age group is 85 plus, not 80 to 84. That makes statement D incorrect. So D is the one that is not true. Final answer, D. Because the 85 plus group is actually the least numerous after excluding less than 1, not 80 to 84. Alright, question 45. We've got a passage defending the much-maligned younger generation, arguing that because the world has changed, especially via rapid technology. Only the young properly grasp it. From there, the author moves to a normative claim. Those who understand the present should set the moral standards for it. The clincher is the sentence. It is they, not their parents or grandparents, who should be setting moral standards. The later bit about anyone over 25 being blinded and thus invalid in judgment is offered as reinforcement. So the main conclusion is the policy recommendation. Moral standards should be set by the young. Option C states exactly that. Moral standards should be set by people under 25. The explicit age cutoff is consistent with the passage's over 25 invalidity claim. Why not the others? A. Over 25 judgments are not valid is a supporting claim, not the ultimate point. B. Moral standards have changed is an intermediate claim used to rebut the critics. E. Only the young understand the world is a premise. And D. Mischaracterizes the stance. The author doesn't concede the behavior is immoral, only that older folks regard it as such. Therefore, the main conclusion is C.
Isn't he great? Arthur's your very own Oxbridge tutor, built by real tutors who've guided hundreds of applicants into Oxford and Cambridge. He doesn't just know what makes a good candidate, he knows what makes an exceptional one. You've already learned from him here. Imagine what happens when he's guiding you directly. Interview slots fill quickly before the season starts, so don't wait. Book your session now at arthurtutoring.co.uk.
All right, question 46. We're told for rain to be possible, clouds must be present. Forecast says clear skies, so there's no chance of rain. The skeleton there is, rain requires clouds. No clouds, therefore no rain. That's the contrapositive of a necessary condition. Textbook modus tollens. So I'm scanning for an option that says X only happens if Y. Y isn't happening, therefore X won't happen. A. Fish need at least 25 degrees Celsius to survive. Fish are alive? Write down. So, temperature is at least 25 degrees Celsius. That's using the necessary condition in the forward direction. Survive implies temp equals 25. Valid, but it's modus ponens, not contrapositive, not the same structure. B. Solar eclipses only occur at new moon. No new moon today, so no solar eclipse today. Perfect. Eclipse requires new moon, not new moon, therefore no eclipse. That mirrors the rain and clouds reasoning exactly. C. A scab only forms when platelets clot. No scabs, so you don't have platelets. That's a classic logical misstep, denying the antecedent. You can have platelets without forming a scab. D. Below 0 degrees Celsius, pipes are at risk of bursting. Therefore, at -5 degrees Celsius, all pipes will burst. That's jumping from at risk to will, which illegitimately strengthens the conclusion. Different and invalid. E. Deciduous trees lose leaves in autumn. Autumn is late, so leaves won't fall until winter. That's muddled causality and timing. And not a clean necessary condition contrapositive. So the parallel is clearly B. Same necessary condition and contrapositive move. Final answer, B, because it preserves the exact logical form. All right, question 47. We've got an argument saying prostitution's been illegal forever, yet it persists. Illegality hasn't deterred it. We won't eradicate it. Therefore, we should legalize it and save the enforcement money for better uses. So the principle is, if prohibiting something doesn't eliminate it and enforcement is costly, then legalize it. Now, which option mirrors that principle? Option A, prosecute clients but not prostitutes. That's a policy tweak. Not the inevitability equals legalize move. Doesn't match. Option C, don't prosecute drug dealers who are driven by poverty. That's about mitigating circumstances and fairness, not futility of prohibition. So no. Option D, focus on modern crimes like hacking. That's resource prioritization, yes, but nothing about legalizing something because it's ineradicable. Different principle. Option E, don't waste money rehabilitating young offenders. Again, a resource efficiency claim, but not about legalizing an activity because you can't stamp it out. It's a different domain, rehabilitation versus prohibition. Option B, some people will commit murders whether or not murder is illegal, so murder should not be illegal. Now, that's obviously an appalling conclusion, but structurally it does the same thing, because illegality doesn't eliminate the behavior, it should be legal. It illustrates the same principle. Indeed, it exposes how questionable the principle can be when applied to a different case. The original also mentioned wasted enforcement money, which B doesn't. But the core principle is the futility of prohibition leading to legalization. That's the match. So despite its shock value, B clearly exemplifies the underlying principle. Final answer, B, because it applies the same reasoning. If illegality fails to eradicate a behavior, we should legalize it. All right. Question 48. 3 moons orbiting Melpomene. Othello takes 20 days, Hamlet 45 days, and Romeo 120 days. The diagram shows them all on the same radial line, nearest to farthest. Othello, then Hamlet, then Romeo. We're asked how often that precise alignment recurs. My immediate move is to translate the periods into angular speeds. That's a neat shortcut because we're dealing with repeating angles. Othello, 360 degrees divided by 20 equals 18 degrees per day. Hamlet, 360 degrees divided by 45 equals 8 degrees per day. Romeo, 360 degrees divided by 120 equals 3 degrees per day. If at time 0 they are aligned, as shown, we want the next positive time t when their angular positions are again the same, mod 360 degrees, i.e. they all lie on the same ray from the planet. So, look at relative angular speeds. Othello versus Hamlet differ by 18 minus 8 equals 10 degrees per day. So for those two to realign on the same angle, we need t multiplied by 10 degrees to be a multiple of 360 degrees, giving t equals 360 divided by 10 equals 36 days, or integer multiples thereof. Othello versus Romeo differ by 18 minus 3 equals 15 degrees per day. So we need t multiplied by 15 degrees to be a multiple of 360 degrees, giving t equals 360 divided by 15 equals 24 days, or multiples. At this point, I might be tempted to choose 36 because Othello and Hamlet align every 36 days. But aha, I must include Romeo too. So the time we want must be a common multiple of 36 and 24. The least common multiple of 36 and 24 is 72 days. That gives the first time after 0 when all three share the same angular position again. As a check, the naive LCM of all periods 20, 45, and 120 is 360 days. That's when each individually completes whole number orbits and returns to the exact start positions. But alignments can and do recur sooner because only relative angles matter. So the correct answer is option B, every 72 days. All right, question 49. We're choosing between the same 12 cubic meter van, either for 4 hours or for a full day. And we want the minimum distance at which the day hire becomes cheaper, even though we could return it within 4 hours. Looking at this table, for the 12-meter square van, 4 hours includes 40 miles, costs 47 pounds, then 30p per extra mile. Whereas 1 day includes 120 miles, costs 63 pounds, also 30p per extra mile. So only two things differ. The basic price, £47 versus 63, and the included mileage, 40 versus 120. The per mile rate is the same, which is lovely. Means after the included miles, the cost lines are parallel. Let's set up the break-even. Past 40 miles, the 4-hour cost is 47 plus 0.30 times m minus 40. For the day hire, up to 120 miles, it's a flat £63. So we want the point where the 4-hour option reaches £63. 47 plus 0.30 times m minus 40 is equal to 63. 0.30 times m minus 40 is 16. M minus 40 equals 53 and a third. M equals 93 and a third miles. So at 93.33 miles, the two costs are equal. The question asks for the minimum distance at which the day hire is cheaper, i.e. the first whole mile above that, 94 miles. Quick sense check. 94 miles on 4-hour costs, 47 plus 0.30 times 54 equals £63.20. Day is £63. Indeed cheaper. And beyond 120 miles, the day remains £8 cheaper because both add 30p per mile thereafter. Therefore, the answer is 94 miles, option E. Alright, question 50. Weave a wallpaper with a vertical repeat every 60 centimeters. Each roll is 10 meters long and 50 centimeters wide. The wall is 2.5 meters high by 6.2 meters wide, and we're hanging full vertical drops so that the pattern lines up from one strip to the next. First, how many strips across? Each strip is 50 centimeters wide. The wall is 6.2 meters. That's 620 centimeters. 620 divided by 50 equals 12.4. So we need 13 drops to cover the width. The last one will be trimmed. Now, the length of each drop. Because the pattern repeats every 60 centimeters and we want the tops to align, we must cut each drop to a whole number of repeats that is at least the wall height. Multiples of 60 centimeters, 240 centimeters, is too short. 300 centimeters works. So each drop must be 3.0 meters long. That extra half meter is the pattern matching waist and trimming. From one 10-meter roll, how many 3.0 meters drops can we get? 10 divided by 3 equals 3 full drops, 9 meters, with 1 meter left over. Not enough for a fourth drop. So it's 3 drops per roll. We need 13 drops in total. 4 rolls give 12 drops, just shy. 5 rolls give 15 drops, which is enough. No hidden catch with half-drop matching is mentioned, so the straight repeat assumption stands. Therefore, we'll need 5 rolls. Final answer, C. 5 rolls, because 13 required drops at 3 meters each, and only 3 drops come from a 10-meter roll.